everyone. So, as you notice, there's no Lee. Lee was supposed to be on a cruise, but it turns out he didn't end up going on a cruise. He ended up going. See, he sent me some photos here. See if I can show you where he went. And of course, it'll take me a second to get there. Charlie says he's got a meeting tonight, but there's old Lee. There he is. Lee's went to a dude ranch for vacation instead of the cruise. So they're doing some horseback riding and enjoying life, being crazy. Ain't no way. Not this guy. Lee up on the rocks there. Somebody needs to remind him he's got a bad back. But I think he's in Arkansas someplace. So I'm sure he'll share all that with us when he comes back. But anyway, he's having a great time up there. Oh, look who we've got. Maybe when he comes in. Hey, it's Brad.
Bob.
How you doing, sir?
Doing all right. Doing good. How's everybody here?
Well, Lee's out on vacation, so I was contemplating whether
I was just hearing you say that.
Take another day off or the show must go on, right? So
show must go on.
We went with the show must go on tonight. So, we'll stay as long as we can.
Was in the big city today again.
Did you get everything your heart desired in the big city today?
Everything my heart desired.
Which means my heart Tanqueray.
No, actually. Today my heart desired just under 900 pounds of sugar. So I got that.
So with that response, I already know what you've decided to do, right? So
yes.
So I'm going to let you fill in. I mean, I know we were talking about it yesterday, and I know what I said I would do, but I'll let you explain to everybody watching.
There's actually a video coming out tomorrow morning that will help clarify some of this. The vlog that I did last weekend, I only included just a snippet of those inspections that I did on my colonies, and I'm going to spoil the video, but I found a lot more brood than I was expecting. Mostly sealed brood, but not exclusively. Very little brood that wasn't sealed, so that was encouraging. And we can go into kind of why.
That's really an interesting thing, because where I'm like, I want more brood, you're like, yeah, pump your brakes.
Yeah, they got to pump the brakes right about now. So here's the dichotomy that we're dealing with. If you watch any of Lloyd Harris's presentations, you look at some of the data that Randy Oliver has graphed from Lloyd Harris's work. A principle that really is meaningful to me at this time of the year is the data that shows the rate at which the bees age and die, right?
Right.
So the bees are aging at a quite a steep rate. And as soon as there's a turnaround when flight is ended, which hasn't quite ended yet, there's still some warm weather, that steep decline turns into a far more flat. It's not a flat line, but it's a far more flat line. So what that means is those bees that aren't flying, then they live for a long time. And that's my bees that are going to be there for me in the spring. So on the upside, the brood that I have right now, of course, your bee life cycle over the next 12 days, all of that brood is going to emerge. So those bees that are going to emerge over the next 12 days, they may or may not ever fly when they emerge, because it'd be too cold.
till next
Maybe,
spring.
maybe. I'm hoping it's too cold for them to fly, because then they will never have that steep decline in age. They will just have that nice, gentle slope toward mortality, and that gentle slope can last 6 months.
So, I mean, also, that brood is taking up valuable storage space in a single deep that may be just enough sugar to bump them that extra few
Right.
days they need in the spring to be able to get up.
Right. Right. And that's, to me, the dichotomy, because on one hand, having a nice nest of sealed brood right about now, when the temperature is going to change from flight weather to no flight weather, is just perfect, because all of those brand new fuzzy young bees are going to emerge in there, and they're never going to fly. So they're going to have a nice cluster all winter long. The downside is just what you said. Every cell that has brood in it doesn't have syrup in it. And that is the problem. So what I'm hoping to happen is, over the next 10 to 12 days, I can feed them and I can backfill that space, because there's a lot of space. Some of those have 4 or 5 frames with a patch that's, as big as my hand. It's
Right.
not a slab, but it's, a third of a frame perhaps, and that's a
So,
lot. That's a lot.
so from the beekeeper, Tom, and I see you down there. Wait a second, I'll get you in here, buddy. So the the conversation that we had was, do I have enough time to feed, and am I wasting money on syrup if I don't have time to feed? And my thought was, I would rather have leftover syrup now than dead bees in the spring.
Yeah, if that's the decision, then it's a clear decision. It's still $570 or something I just spent on sugar.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty light load too. That's a half a tank.
And at Costco, it's probably like,
Yeah. Well, I had to ask if I could have that much, because they're starting to clamp
well,
down on
Ian
us.
just came yesterday.
Ian just came yesterday, cleaned us out. Yeah, that Ian, he's been buying all sugar at Costco. But and that's, brings me up to the point of trusting other beekeepers, talking to beekeepers in your area. Um, Doug made a comment the other night when we were talking about this, just in chat. He wasn't on the screen, and he said, "Yeah, I think it's going to be warm enough. We're going to feed for a couple of weeks yet." And I thought, okay, Ian seems to be on board with that. Doug is confirming that method of action. So
Then you have the outlier way down here in South Carolina that says, I'd feed too, probably.
yeah, yeah, me too. Your parameters are completely different. You feed all winter.
But just with the thought process of what you were trying to accomplish, and what, just through our conversations of what happens in the spring, like you said, it becomes a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah, to kind of extrapolate on this whole concept, people quite often ask, well, why do you want to plug them out? Why do you want to stop them from brooding this time of year, kind of thing? And why do I want to stop them from brooding? Well, I'm not going to, well, I guess
it will take them not very long during the winter to start opening that brood nest back up again.
Well, and eating that feed. And
Right.
that's the worst part. They should go into winter with the box and the lid weighing in excess of 90 pounds, closer to 95 to 100 if you can. And they're not there yet. And I have read Mel Disselcone state that in peak season, and this is, early July kind of thing, around the solstice, that the bees will consume 100 pounds of honey a month to raise brood. Right?
So no brood means less feed they'll be consuming, longer time that
exactly.
They
and that's why I can keep that cluster of bees in that box for the next 5 months on that much feed. because when it's not only do they use a lot of feed when they brood, it is absolutely astounding to me how little they eat when they're not brooding at all. And the science tells us that the bottom of the metabolic rate is achieved at a 4C ambient temperature.
Which is why you keep your barn at 4C.
Exactly. Keep the building at 4C. And the rate, actually, when it's very, very cold, the rate of feed consumption is kind of up here, and then it kind of declines nice and evenly down to 4. When it becomes 5, 6, 7, it goes up like this, right? So colder is way better than warmer in that context.
Speaking of which, everybody saw the video I did with the feeder I put out the other day, and it was in the 40s overnight, so they weren't doing much. But as soon as that sun popped out and it got in the 60s to 70 range, it was pretty chaotic in the bee yard. It's like, okay, we're out here flying. There's nothing to forage. Let's get whatever we can from wherever we can. You know,
they're just bonkers. They're just bonkers, aren't they?
Swarm nuke got robbed out. They started hitting the open feeder, and then it kind of started evening out. But today was much more okay. It's kind of a routine now what's happening, but the first day it's like they freaked out with that cold weather, and then it's warm again. Let's go. So
they, and you might be experiencing something. Hey, Tom, something that I've been experiencing year after year is the observance of how, I'm going to say how quickly, how non-quickly the bees actually adjust to a new environmental temperature. Right? We kind of think that, the daytimes and the night times up and down in temperature. Yeah, the bees are fine. Yeah, not really. They seem to start to settle into a new temperature range over a number of days, right?
Right.
So if you're in an area, and I think this is why a lot of times, this is why not you personally, but people in your area, you people.
You people. What do you mean by you people?
I got my people too.
It's like somebody in my area might say, "Well, we got real winter. Why can't you guys keep your bees alive?" Well, it's advantage for me because what you have to deal with is this all the time.
Right. So
that's what's hard on the bees. This is my opinion. That's what's hard on the bees, right?
Well, that goes back to what you were just saying about Lloyd Harris, right? So they're not flying. Life is longer. So we're getting cold days. So the brood is shrinking and we have bees not living as long because they're flying and dying, the whole thing. So, and they're consuming food at a rapid rate because they're not going broodless, right? So it's kind of
Bob, does your queen even do winter bees? I mean, they're pretty much all worker bees year round.
Yeah, winter bees. I don't believe I get a true winter bee. Like, Brad says, the bees I've got now are the bees I'm coming out with in the spring. That's not really the case.
Right. I'm not quite there yet, but I'd say within a month, 4 weeks, I'll be in Brad's position, where whatever bees I got then is what I'll be coming out in spring.
So here's the difficulty in my situation. Here's the difficulty. I've got that last patch of sealed brood, and again, your life cycle, that's going to last 12 days. In 12 days, those are all going to be bees running around on the comb, right? So let's say I am successful to get enough feed into them to backfill that whole nest, set up some nice winter stores, and then in 15 days we get a day or two of full on flight weather, or maybe even more days than that. I get full on flight weather. Well, what's that doing to those nice winter bees that I just had emerge? Clock is ticking. The rule is if they're flying, they're dying, right?
Right.
And so that's not a good thing. You may think, oh, that's nice. It's a late season cleansing flight. No, that's not what you want. You want them inside. You want them, you don't want them flying. And that's why the conversation keeps going around here about refrigeration. I was just talking to Ian about that recently. And, he's just always on the cusp of, man, I want refrigeration in my building kind of thing. So that theoretically, perhaps you can feed them up, get that brood chamber stuffed right full of feed, and move them into a building that's refrigerated, and then flight is done. You've controlled that, right? No flight. And then in the spring, you can refrigerate that and hold them off a little while until the weather outside is nicer, because that's the other end of the equation. In the spring, the daytime temperatures start to get too warm to keep the bees settled into the building, right? They start to get jumpy. They start to, run around and start to fly and poop on everything. And in the spring, when it starts to get a bit warm, but the nights are still pretty cold for a hive that's not wrapped, and the clusters are smaller, and they're kind of stressed from the winter and everything. You don't just want to bring them out and dump them in the apiary and say, okay, you can put up with the cold nights. So it's a real challenge there to say, when is it warm enough to bring these unwrapped hives? There's a lot of people actually in this area who bring their bees out of the building in the spring and then they wrap them. Give them a little bit of help with those cold nights. So there's some dynamics there, and I'm still lost. I'm still trying to catch on to how to do it. I think the big crux of it is I was a bit late getting the feed into them. It's so hard to understand in early September. Weather's warm, they take feed fast. To put a pail of feed, I'll put a 2.5 gallon pail of 2-to-1 on that hive, and in 6 days it's empty. And I think, well, that was easy. And then it'll take a month to get the next one in them, right?
And they just slow down.
I just filled up 10 2-gallon buckets tonight because I had hives that I thought were okay, or borderline okay, and now they're light because the past few weeks they're eating up all the stores. So I'm hitting them with feeder again. And we're supposed to have a warm week next week, 70 degrees, like 3 or 4 days in a row. So flying weather. We haven't quite got down to non-flying. Well, we just had 5 days. We only got up to low 50s for the highs.
You still have brood?
So,
you have brood?
Yeah, there's a little bit of brood. 1 to 3 frames or 4 frames per most hives.
I'm going to see if I can make
looked in the last 2 weeks. It's getting too late in the year, from my opinion.
I said, I'm trying to see if I can make a November queen down in South Carolina.
Well, I think I could. I'm pulling frames, and there's drones everywhere in those hives. I don't know what's going on.
I've got a few drones still around, but I went into with the robbing situation I had yesterday. I had that 6-frame plastic hive, the insulated hive. And I was like, well, if I want to move this nuke into there, and I got in there, I'm like, well, I don't see a queen. I see plenty of bees, but I don't see a queen. So I went over to the hive that took off after putting the Appy tablet in there. And I'm like, you don't need this frame of eggs, brood, and larvae and bees. Put that over there and put the lid on the insulated hive, and then went back and took the empty frame that I pulled out of there that doesn't have anything but maybe a little bit of pollen in it, and put it back in that hive. So since she's laying so good, I just gave her an empty frame to go to work in. And I went out there today. I'm like, well, did any of these bees even stay in there? And I opened it up. Sure enough, that frame I put right in the center, bees on both sides, nice little cluster. So I'm like, well, they stayed, so there's something there. You know, be my luck, I accidentally grabbed the queen out of that other box, right? That's how my luck goes. I'm like, I don't see her. Great, let's go. And then go back, and there'll be 50 queen cells in mother hive.
Russell just asked a question that brings a new dynamic to this, just another little wrinkle, but I think it's a helpful wrinkle. And he pointed out, and he's exactly right. I kind of forgot this principle that
3 weeks.
the bees don't fly right away. It could be 3 weeks before they fly.
Right.
So all of the bees that have emerged, maybe since the 1st of October, maybe the second week in October, and then how and when do they have time to they don't. That's why they're eating syrup, because they'll be 6 months before a poop.
So
that's another remarkable thing.
I've seen a lot of comments on one of the videos posted this week about, why don't you do mountain camp method? Why don't you do this kind of stuff? And I think if I'm not I don't keep bees in Canada, guys. This is just my thoughts. Is that the roughage that then they have to chew that and consume it, then they have to process it, and then they have to store it, right? Or just eat it. But that's something that's undesirable for Canada, especially in the wintertime, right?
I've never seen anybody do that here. It's a management nightmare, a logistical nightmare. And don't forget,
yours are stacked on pallets.
In my operation, and in my operation, and in, I call myself small scale commercial, right? I try to manage it like commercial because I'm trying to do all I can solo, like by myself, right? So I've got like 100 and what did I say, Bob? 177 colonies or something right now. That's a lot. That's a lot to manage, one person. So I have to set up my infrastructure to lend itself well to that. And when you want to start introducing, well, let's just do some mountain camp, and okay, well, now we got to add some shims to every hive. I don't have 177 of those shims. And now we've got to go and I don't even know how you do it. Put a bunch of newspaper on top and dump a bunch of sugar, and it shouldn't be necessary. I should just get my bleep feeding done in early September, right?
Right.
So it's just a logistical nightmare to be kind of shifting gears on things. And you're right, Bob. They're stacked in the building, so best case scenario, I could actually access 25% of them because they're 4 high. So you can't really feed
here when people use that mountain camp method, like Mr. Sam my mentor, he uses mountain camp method in the wintertime. I don't know. I don't know what the huge benefit is for it here, because we don't get that much moisture in the hive because it doesn't get that cold outside. However, what I also find is they like to rip those strips of paper towel or newspaper out, and then they're all over the yard and wherever they drop them at, or in front. But now in my yard, it'd probably be camouflage with all the other crap in my yard. I understand that.
Well, I don't so much mind that because it's just paper and rain or two and it's dirt, right?
Fertilizing the yard.
Brian's asking, what's the hardest tasks being solo? The hardest task? Oh, that's a good question. Probably honey flow as a whole. But the hardest part of this season is harvest because I have to set escapes. I have to pull honey. Once I get honey in the honey house, I want to extract it. I have to treat bees and feed bees, and there's so many of those things like treating bees and feeding bees and pulling honey and extracting. All 4 of those things are top tier things, right? I can't
Treating them.
prioritize those. And this is kind of in my head. I kind of go around in circles in my head because I have 4 top priority things that I have to do, and I can't be in 2 places at one time, right? Regardless
And
of if it's a you know, a hard day or a long day or whatever, I simply can't be 2 places. I have to decide which of those 3 things are not going to get done today,
and then
right?
and then
So
not
that's
all
kind of the
those
hardest
things
for
can
me.
you complete in one day with that many
Oh
colonies,
no,
right?
no, 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 no,
So it's
no! You
multiple
can't do that
days.
one day.
So you
No,
got 4 things
like
you got to get done.
extracting is 3 weeks. Um, Feeding, you know, you have to mix feed, and you have to serve feed. You have to get out the pails. You have to put the pails away. You know, so that's I don't know. All in all, it's maybe 3 or 4 days. So it's usually that kind of thing that takes priority because you can knock it off, right? I can say, okay, I'm going to mix feed, fill the pails, put them on the hives. That's a day, right? I can do that. That's okay. Treating, again, I want to put some apivar on. If I'm lucky, I can do it in a day. If time doesn't lend itself, then it might take me 2 days, but then I have to take those strips out. Want to do oxalic
Right.
acid, that's going to take me a day or 2. So yeah, it's just it's a mental thing too. It's kind of like, well, what am I not going to do? And usually it's extracting, and that's why it takes 3 weeks.
And then Mother
It's a,
Nature
phys-
always throws a
it's a
curveball.
physical thing too, Brad.
It's a
Picking all
physical
those
thing.
boxes up. Yeah.
It's a physical thing. Yeah, it's both.
Mental.
I kind of I really hate I really hate it because you know I want to do it all, but I can't do it all.
And then
So
you get to the point you're like, okay, today you're saying tomorrow I'm putting escapes and everything. And then
yeah.
all of a sudden there's a gully washer.
Oh yeah.
There's rain everywhere,
Right.
right? You're like,
Oh
well, I
yeah.
can't do that today.
It's like
Now
I was on a roll with my feed, and I was like, okay, I got to keep up with the feeding, and I mixed a tank of syrup, and it rained for about 8 days. So my tank of syrup
Right.
is sitting there in the rain, and I could have gone and filled the jars, I suppose, in the rain and the cold. I'm a bit of a wimp
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, but then you
So I
catch
thought I could get
ammonia.
away with just wait. Then I thought I could get away with just waiting for a
it'll be
warmer day.
over in a day. We'll be back
Well,
out.
that's just exactly it. It's kind of like, well, tomorrow will be nicer, and tomorrow turns into a week and a half.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
I,
my
I'm,
thing is
I'm
Hey,
considering.
go ahead, Tom.
I had a
Go
big
ahead, Tom.
Friday the 13th surprise. In the morning, I got a message on my phone saying there was a swarm. And I go, no way. You don't have a middle of October swarm, maybe August. Well, I got a picture of it, and I'll be darned, about a 4 frame swarm. So I went and got it, and the bees were a little bit small on average, so I knew it was a mite infested abscondent from somewhere. So
you
I'm
threw an
now
appy
trying to
tablet in there.
What's that?
So you threw an appy tablet in there with them.
Well, I just bought 10 of them from you,
Yeah.
from Beesware. Because remember, I told you I needed 3 more? Well, now I need 4 more. So I'm putting one of those in when they come in tomorrow, hopefully. And then I'm feeding them actually a quart of honey right now. And they've already taken down over the weekend now, 3 days, almost a quart of honey. So they're sucking it down. I'm hoping they're storing it versus eating it, but I'm sure they're doing both. So I'm feeding some of the honey back to my bees. So now I got 41 hives. I was 45 to 38, now I'm back up to 41.
Well, I've lost a few of my, like the little small ones, which were iffy at best anyway, right? So it's like, okay. And then the other food gets robbed out by the other bees, so they carry it back home. So feed's not to waste, really.
I was able to look in some of those colonies, 3 actually, that I got from James this year, yesterday, and there's a lot of brood there still, but those look a lot nicer than what I have at my home yard. I had a bad year. Nosema in the spring and then late summer mites were way too high. So the bees don't look that good here. The mites over there were a lot more reasonable. Now I did lose a few colonies over there because I think there was a lot of swarms and supersedures, and the swarms are my fault, of course. But I think there were some supersedures that didn't work out. So there was actually, I think, about 11 colonies I lost over there. So that's 25%. That's not good. But what's left, 29, they actually look pretty good.
That I don't, obviously anytime we lose bees is not a great thing. However, I feel like the ones that I've lost this year for my own stupidity or not getting mite treatments on in time, or whatever, there's a plethora of reasons that could happen. I feel like going into our winter here, my bees look better than they have before. So it gives me a better launch pad in the spring to get things going, So
yeah,
I'm feeling pretty good about that right now.
Well, this summer went very differently than any other year I've spent keeping bees. So we'll see. Maybe things won't look too rosy in the spring again, but we'll see. We'll see how all of this worked out. Like all of these, that I've got set up here. There's 77 of those.
Now, when do you end up taking those out of those? Like you got that Pro Nuke on the end right there. Obviously,
it's an old picture.
Yeah, obviously,
it's an old picture. They're all in 6s now. Yeah, there's a couple. I think I have 2 that are in these 4s. I don't expect much of them, but they just didn't warrant anything bigger.
Right.
So they just stayed in 4s. But yeah, there's 77 there. So, if half of them live, 30, 35 to 40, that's okay. That's a yard.
Yeah, you're in good shape as far as those.
Right.
And it's learning. I'm learning how to do that. And I think and I keep saying this too, people are going to get tired of me saying it, but one of the coolest things about all those 77 nukes that I have, and there was more, it's just that, of course, some of them don't work out, right? You just kind of attrition over time, is 100% of the resources for the nukes and for the cell builder, 100% of resources came from the zombie nukes that I had this summer. Oh, so there was no resources taken from my honey producers.
All right, so that brings up
that's the key.
That brings up an interesting conversation for me. So, and nothing I say, please don't hold it against me in a court of law. So if the zombie queens were good enough to produce all of those nukes, then in my mind, they would have been good enough to be in a production hive by themselves.
Maybe they would have. There's just a certain point in time when
good queens are good honey queens either. Some are just brood queens. True.
And you can't always tell the future with certainty. So, but when things come out in the spring, I assess every colony, and I just use strokes on the lid. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? 1 is probably not going to make it. 2 is it's weak, might make it. 3 is average. 4 extra special. Right? And sometimes there's 5s or 6s when they get really out of hand. But that's my system. So bring that out. And early April, crack the lid. It's just a totally subjective, crack the lid, look at what that thing looks like, put a mark on the lid. Then I get in early May, I start managing these colonies, and I'll crack a lid and it'll say, 3 on this lid. I'll crack it and now it looks like a 1. I don't know what in the
Right.
world's going on here, right? So that kind of a colony will become a zombie, because if she's not dead, then she just goes in one of these little 4-frame boxes, or a
Which
Pro Nuke, usually a 4-frame box, off to the side, and just like do what you want to do. So I just have to make that choice at that point. And some of them die, and some of them really produce.
Yes, and I've noticed that before too. When I've had them in too big of a box, they just kind of flounder and don't really. But then you move them back to that smaller box, and they're like, "Oh, this is perfect!" Wow, and they fill it up.
Exactly. They kind of get demoralized, don't they, with a big
Yeah.
box? They just sort of wander around aimlessly, and they don't do anything. Yeah, yeah. So I've used those poly boxes a lot for zombies, because just the insulation factor, I feel that they do fairly well in the poly boxes. So yeah, maybe I made some bad calls this spring with the zombies and said, "Hey, you get out of here and go over to the corner and think about what you did," right? But
But then you're like, now
it
you
worked
got all
out,
these nukes that they produced for you, and you're
because
like,
I've got 77 nukes
right. So now you're like,
and my cell builder.
and just
Plus
leave
the
them
cell
go.
builder, the last 3 cells that I made, I left in the cell builder. I just split the cell builder into 3 nukes, left a cell in each one. One of them didn't mate. 2 of them are going fine. So the zombie nukes produced the cell builder, and the cell builder produced 2 more nukes when all was said and done.
Right.
So
it's kind of a self fulfilling system. It's called sustainability, I guess is what it's called, isn't it?
Right. Sounds like it works for you, Brad. That's perfect.
I mean,
Well, I
technically,
think the key, and Alex said this one night we were talking, and Alex said something I had never thought about before. And he just said, he piped up and he said, "You're doing what Michael Palmer does." And I thought, well, I guess, sort of in a way I am. Michael Palmer uses healthy colonies to do what he does. Like, he has those brood factories and stuff, right? He raises these nukes, and the only purpose for these nukes is to support his queen rearing operation. And that's not exactly what I'm doing, but the effect is kind of the same.
All
I'm trying
scale.
to use
Right.
resources. Well, and I'm trying to use, like, see these boxes, right? I got about 60 of these boxes sitting here. So they're either going to sit on the pallet empty, or they're going to have an old queen in there, fighting for her life.
Right.
and if
She's
she
either going to
died,
die.
then they'll supersede and make their own queen.
They might, or the colony just dies. But that costs me this much, right? To
Right.
make that happen, because this box is sitting there on a pallet already. I have the equipment, and I know that's not the case with everyone, but I have the
Right.
equipment. So instead of pinching that queen, I just put her in that box, set her over in the corner of the apiary, tell her to think about what she did, and sit in the corner and think about what she did.
She just gets
and like I said, I set my zombies over there this year, and half of them died. Oh well.
Right.
And the other half produced 77 more nukes. That was pretty cool.
So with your zombies, you said half of them died. How many zombies did you start out with?
I don't even know. I would say there was a lot. There was a lot, because you saw what kind of spring I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept zombieizing colonies all the time. There was probably 40 of them.
So take the old queen, put her in a nuke, drop a new queen into the box, let them release her.
They weren't even that good. It was just take what's left of that colony and put it in a box, because usually there was no more than 1 or 2 frames of anything in that box.
I gotcha.
It's a colony that is going to die, And so you just pull out whatever's in there, stick it in a 4-frame box, and give it one of these, and
Right.
and then
And
let it
them roll.
do its thing. And like I say, half of them die, and then the other half might be okay, and quarter of those might be really extra special, and some of them were just pretty amazing.
But it's so interesting, and this is one thing I deal with, right? So you got the management of the bees, but then on the other end you have your equipment management, right? You have X number of boxes, X number of frames you can deal with, or that you have without going to buy and making new stuff, new frames, all that stuff. So when you start making zombies, not only are you making zombies, but now you're freeing up good equipment that a crappy colony is in and replacing that with hopefully a brand new colony that you've made conveniently enough off the crappy colony that you took out of there.
That's exactly it, Bob. So I set the zombies aside. Right. She keeps doing what she can do. She'll lay a couple of frames of brood, and then I take a bunch of that resource and I make a cell builder, and then I graft and I get these virgins, and then I pull brood out of the zombie, set it in another one of these little 4-frame nukes, put my virgin in there. Oh, now I've got a beautiful new little hive there.
But
right?
with the caveat being
zombie has
that they were good queens and good colonies the year previous, right? So it's not like
they're probably just
colony.
old.
Yeah,
they're probably just old, and some of them do. Some of them will lay for a while, and they're just old, and they'll lay for a while, and then they'll start laying drones or something. They just run out of juice, and that's okay. I've got all the brood they will produce, so I'm happy with that. I think Mike's coming into it a little bit late here. He's asking what makes them zombies, and I'll just reiterate: in the spring, I have to make that judgment call. I assess all the hives in April when they come out of the building, and then in May I'll assess them again. And if they're going backwards, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to make it, then it's kind of pointless, like you said, Bob. One of my very dear mentors here said to me in my very first year of beekeeping, don't waste good equipment on crappy bees. Simple as that. So they come out of those 10-frame boxes because there's only 2 frames of bees and a queen is just kind of walking around, and then put them in these little 4-frame boxes and set them off and call them zombies. And that name came from Phil.
Right.
So that's kind of why they can become zombies.
This year, though, because that is hard for a hobbyist or a backyard guy to do. And I say that because it's our nature that we don't want our bees to die. So we keep throwing queens and we keep throwing resources. And we keep throwing resource that crappy colony instead of doing the right thing. Take that out of there, put it in a nuke. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. Now make yourself a nice, healthy nuke and put it in that big 10-frame box you've got there with a fresh queen and let her go. And then that queen that's off to the side, you can keep robbing brood, equalizing your colonies, or just keep making more 4-frame nukes, and keep growing that way.
I talk about that a lot on my channel about resource. Like, you've got resource, so you've got a nice colony. It's got a nice box. It's got nice drawn comb. It's got nice food stores. It's got nice pollen stores. It's got nice open brood, a nice sealed brood. It's got a nice population of bees. It's got a nice big fat queen. She's doing her job. All of that is resource. Right. So if that isn't functioning perfectly as a cohesive unit, it's not gone. There's still a lot there that you can use. If absolutely nothing else, you've got a box of drawn comb, which is just gold, right? So you got a box of drawn comb that's got a whole bunch of pollen in it. Well, that's great. You can do so many things with that. You've got a bunch of feed stores. That's fantastic. You can take care of so many colonies that way. You've got a hive. You've got a box and a bottom board and a lid, and you've got, maybe your queen died. Well, you still have a box full of bees. Well, guess what you can do now? make a cell builder or combine it with something else, or that's a resource. So there's all of these components that can be used in so many different ways. And those zombies, they made my cell builder. They made the cell builder.
I run 6 to 9 resource hives, so I do a little bit different than you, Brad. But I'll take those resource hives, take the queen out, a frame of food and breed, put her off to the side, and then take those other 6 and make them all into nukes. And then, like you said, put virgin queens in them that I grafted a week before.
Well,
similar thing.
It's definitely a different. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Tom.
And then I let them just rebuild right back up to be my resources for the rest of the season. And sometimes I'll replace those queens if I think they're turning into zombie queens.
And I think sometimes,
and also, I move all my older comb. I move my older comb over there too. That way, I keep fresh comb in my production hives.
Yeah.
So, management of that.
When new beekeepers, ask questions, and you can kind of tell that and rightfully so, that they somehow think there's one way to do it, and there's a paint by numbers way, and there's a right and wrong, and there's I should do it the way you do it, and all kinds of things. I'm a big fan of doing things that you understand. Like, understand it first and do it, and don't put off doing it because you don't understand it. Like, jump in, right? But
don't be afraid to try.
Kind of, don't be afraid to experiment and try, and understand kind of why you're doing what you're doing, because then you could make, if I emulate Ian, for example, which I've emulated Ian a lot because he's successful and he kind of manages the way I like to manage and all kinds of stuff. But I always try to understand why he does what he does, because sometimes if I just do paint by numbers and follow him blindly, one day I'll realize that, well, why am I doing all this work? Because this doesn't apply to me, right? I'll be doing a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with the way I keep bees, so I don't have to do it, or whatever, or it's wrong, or it's not, the way I should be doing it. So I try to understand what are you trying to accomplish by doing that, is kind of what the question I want to ask. You're doing all of this stuff. What are you trying to accomplish? And then I can kind of take that and say, okay, I can sort of accomplish the same thing because I don't have a crew. I'm a solo beekeeper kind of thing, trying to manage as many as I can. And so I can make my own way. And I think that's key to understand why, and then develop the how.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of the old bee farm, like the old folks home, the old bee home, where, hey, she's just not cutting it anymore. We're going to break her out with a frame or two and some drawn comb and just let her do whatever, because we know already the reason she's getting downgraded is because she can't do this anymore, but she can still lay some babies, and I can use them babies to make nukes or do whatever. That, I think that.
And sometimes it's a matter of statistics too. It's do I want to put this queen into winter? She's going to eat like $30 worth of feed. She's going to take $10 worth of treatments or whatever, right? So it's going to cost me a lot of money to put her in the building, not to mention the space in the building and the work to do it. So I'm thinking statistically, this a 4-year-old queen or whatever other issue there might be, thinking, geez, I can do better than that. I can increase that likelihood by just replacing that queen at the right time.
Right.
And maybe I don't replace her. Maybe I zombie her and then use the resource in her hive to host a new virgin queen or something like that.
Right.
Like, it's statistics.
This Wednesday, we're supposed to have a warm day. I'm going into that mite-infested swarm that I just caught. And if I don't see a frame of a brood already, she's at least laying, I'm just going to pinch her and add the bees to another hive because I don't have time to mess with it. And it's too late in the season. If I don't see a good already assault ball, give her 4 or 5 days. She should have at least a frame laid up.
Do you have an
Or
insulated?
I called a
side.
lot this fall that way.
Yeah.
See,
Well, she
small
might
stuff
be getting
like
called.
that, small stuff like that is great for like that licensed 6-frame poly nuke. That I think for those small late season swarms and stuff like that, it's great. I think my mom's door alarm's off. Good.
Well, I put the hive on. I used a double screen board and I put it on top of one of my better hives that has got good bee populations just for the help it warm.
Right.
See if that works.
Yeah, Brian, good point there. He says those old queens are great for your observation hive to take to the market. That's exactly what I do, Brian.
Yes.
I'll go through my zombies. If I'm doing a market, I'll just go through the zombies and pick out an old queen. If something happens and she doesn't make it home, it's well.
No big deal, right?
And then those queens, I've traditionally given the whole nuke, but this year I gave the queens to a buddy, and he just made up some nukes and he tries to winter them. He says about half of them make it, so it's worth it to him. He's a good friend. We kind of have fun with it. That I'll just pass him off my old zombies in the fall, and not in the fall. It'll be late August generally, and then he'll winter them. Say, so how many of those that live? Well, about half of them died. Okay.
Well, he's 50% better off. He just gives me frames.
Well, sure. And he can do the same thing. He can take that. It's a little cluster. He could put a new queen in it. Bob's your uncle. Right?
Sorry about the alarm, guys.
Sorry.
I can't hear it, so it's okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we got an alarm on my mom's bedroom in case she gets up in the middle of the night and starts wandering the house. It scares the crap out of everybody. But but yeah, I mean, so like me trying to make this queen, well, I put it in there yesterday, which means it would be hatching out when I'm in Mississippi for the conference, right? So it's totally going to be sink or swim on this little nuke, right? But it's in an insulated nuke, and I popped that top when I checked it today, and I could feel the heat coming off of there. So it's keeping heat in. I'm really kind of surprised at that little plastic hive right now. Okay. Sorry.
Bob, our wooden boxes don't hold about hardly anything.
Well, I started putting some of these things that Mehmet brought out to me together, and I'm going to grab this little cube that I was talking about to kind of show you. It's not an commercial tonight, but it's this is how the other one's made too, right? So the bottom
show and tell,
and it's got insulation on the inside of the cover, so it is holding heat in. This is the little double 3-frame
and mini. Out.
What's that? Oh, and out these sides
heat in and out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just saying.
Right.
That's
works
insulation.
ways.
We think about holding heat in, but it works both ways.
And this little thing has little rubber feet that conveniently enough will stack with the other ones, so you could really put them too high or three. I mean, you could probably go as high as you want to. Not that the bees would. I mean, you probably get a lot of drift, but it's a cool little deal here with the entrance on both sides.
That's probably mostly for transport. If you were Jose, for example, you'd be putting those on a truck at some point, and they'd all nicely lock together. It'd be super easy to transport. Strap
them down and take off.
Yeah.
I'm really kind of intrigued by these right now. I'm trying them out. So, I mean, it's definitely not a light styrofoam cube, so it's pretty good looking little deal right now. But I was surprised when I pulled that one frame of, I didn't pull the brood out, but when I pulled that top off, boy, I could feel that heat it was like a hand warmer in there. You could feel it.
94 degrees feels pretty good. Of
course, they're probably
only 50 out.
They probably said, "Shit, old man, close the damn door. We're trying to keep it heat."
Exactly. Like, what in the world's going on?
I was just checking to see if the bees flew back to their original location, but Yeah, no, there was full frame of brood and everything in there. So it was, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I don't know if that's me, Bob, or what you just said there. I've kind of noticed whenever I do bees in the fall time here, they seem to stay wherever you put them. They don't seem to want to fly back, back to their original hive. I've kind of noticed that too over the last couple of years.
Oh, and when it
I
gets
don't know if
colder
there's any
outside.
truth
Now,
to that or not.
well, is it like what's the weather? Is it full flight temperatures or?
Half
In
and
the,
half.
yeah, in the day,
Some days are, some days aren't.
we had a high of like 70
So
today
maybe
and a low of 44.
like there's if it's just kind of a a moderate and not very much flight, you might not notice the ones that kind of go out and don't come back because not many of them actually go out. And if it's cold and they don't fly, then they're not going to go. If
I
they're
think,
in the hive for a day, they're going to stay there. That's my opinion, and that's my
yeah,
experience. That if they don't fly for a day, you can put them wherever you want, and they're going to stay.
yeah, I think a couple times that's what happens. We had a cloudy 50-degree day and they weren't really
Yeah,
flying.
yeah,
The next
yeah.
day it got warm and they
That's
stayed.
that's handy in the fall because I do all my culling, and then I've got pallets that have one hive on pallets and
Yeah,
all through the apiary. So then, I mean, it might be next week, it might be the week after. I'll just go through there, consolidate, pick a hive up, move it across the yard, put it on a different pallet. Because if they're not flying that day, they're not going to know any
right,
difference.
right.
The yeah, so I mean that's kind of just what I've been doing. Obviously, I've been doing some feeding. Um, I've got one half of my apiary that the only thing that I haven't hit any OA yet. I'm planning to soon, but haven't done that yet. And then the one half only got on that right side only got appy tablets. The main part of what I consider my honey production side has had Apivar, and then got an appy tablet after for kind of a cleanup, and that's it, with those, and just feed the crap out of them, trying to get them to pack it away. So that's, I mean, and then wait till spring. And
I still got about 7 or 8 more hives. I got to get more weight on them.
well, I noticed when I started putting that 2-to-1, or actually it's 70-30, the 70-30 syrup on them, that'll put weight on them quick, because
Yeah.
Kind of wish I had that stuff.
they can't consume
That'd be nice.
as fast. And matter of fact, the bug farmer commented on a video. He's like, "Hey, where did you get that? Where can I get some?" So
Yeah.
I mean, he's 3 hours. He's 3 hours to the east of me. I'm sorry, to the west of me. If he was 3 hours to the east of me, he'd be in the Atlantic Ocean. So he's 3 hours to the west of me, and so maybe it's something that he comes down here, and then we go up there. I'll show him where to get it from. It'd be worth it. Depending on the number of hives, if you were buying a tote, it would probably be worth the making the trip if you're only doing it like once in the fall and once in the spring type of thing. And probably, I mean, judging by the cost that everybody's putting in sugar, that it's probably would be worth it anyway, even, at the price that we got it for down
I plan
here.
to buy a tote next year, take the drive and just get a whole tote loaded on my truck.
It's well, see, now since I've gotten it, I really don't drive my pickup truck that much because it's got this big honking tote in the back of it with syrup in it, right?
Right.
Now
Right.
Bob's looking to buy a trailer.
Yeah. Now I'm looking at trailers and different stuff. But I also went and started inquiring about some retail / warehouse space for a potential brick and mortar store. But what I'm finding out is that it's really expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
and not knowing how much space when you start that you are really going to need to get things rolling, right? And
I know how much space you're going to need, more than you have.
yeah, a lot, right?
That's
So
the
I mean,
rule.
yeah, always. If you get 1,500, you should have got 3,000. But I called one
You always
place
need more space.
that's exactly the size. It's almost like they duplicated the building I work in for my day job on just on the opposite corner. But my company rents it for like $850 a month. I called him, he wants $4,000 a month. I'm like, there's no way. No way. You know how many bee supplies you'd have to sell to profit $4,000 to just pay the rent, not including the utilities and everything. So yeah, that I said, well, hey, appreciate you getting back with me, but this evidently is not the space that I need. It'd be perfect, but it's not the space that I need. Oh, well, you can buy the whole place for like 300,000. Yeah, let me get back to you on that. You know, that's yeah, it's probably not going to happen. And right now, just with the stuff that I have got, like the tablets, and I've got 10 cases of tablets here. 10 cases for my little operation. That takes a lot of room. And you know, packs and packs of gloves. So I've got like 60 packs of gloves in here. And it's like, I might have those 5 years. You know, I don't know. So
I could store some of those for you.
yeah, yeah. Just ship them up here. We'll store them.
Size 12.
Yeah, I got to get the site.
And those tablets, I could store the tablets.
I'm surprised you haven't gotten your package yet. Let me see.
Look today.
Flower Street wants to know what my business plan ideas are for next year. Well, that's a big topic, right? So obviously the people that have been following me and my YouTube and everything, I have not hidden it from anybody that I have an online store. I'm trying to grow that and grow that. So I definitely want to grow the items I carry in the store, but I think I'm going to start shifting more into my queen rearing, because I can do it so much earlier than, let's say, Tom, where Tom's at, right? So if Tom needs queens and he'd be like, you know what? I'm going to make this many nukes in the spring. I know Bob's going to have queens ready about the time I need to make nukes, right? So he can get that early season thing going on. I mean, because, you know, Greg Burns does queens, but Greg Burns is in a similar geographic location as Tom there. So there might be a little bit of a timing issue where I don't have as many of those things. So right now it's kind of my goal. These little cubes, I would like to get 100 of them. And that will give me the ability to raise 200 queens at a time. Right. So I could have always queens processing like it's paperwork or something, but, you know, always in process of being mated, or and then also, you know, and that takes resources, that takes bees, right? So with these little things, because they're not a full frame, I won't be able to just do like I did with the 2-framers, put a frame in there, which the 2-framers, I'm not real happy with those, because there's a lot of different little, first of all, you got to have deep frames of drawn comb. And if you take those, now you're robbing that out of your mother colonies, right? Which is, now I'm having to put empties in there to let them draw it out. Where with these, it's more like the little cube, right? You shake some bees in there, you put the lid on, half of them are on one side, half of them are on the other, add a queen cell. I don't have to worry about going back and squishing down queen cells, because they have no eggs, they have no comb. They have to build all that, right? So, and my colonies can make bees. So the brood and eggs and larvae, well, I can work with that. So I'm kind of trying to move more towards that. And of course, that'll allow me to have my nukes that I'm going to sell off my splits. And, you know, I should have more honey production colonies this year coming up as compared to any of the other ones that I've had, because Lord willing, knock on wood, that they come out strong in the spring. And, you know, here's the thing. I've made 17 has kind of been the number that every year it's like, oh, I had 100 going into winter, but I got 17 coming into spring. Right? It doesn't. It kind of seems to always be the number. But at this point, I'm into 30s, right? So maybe I lose, let's say, 5 more. I think I'm like at 38. So if I lose 5 over the winter, well, now I'm at 33. That's almost double what I've ever had coming out of spring. Right. So that to me is a win, right? So now I've got 33 colonies that can produce honey instead of 17 plus a bunch of first year nukes that are trying to make their way in the world. And
yeah, experiment this year for my overwintering. I made 9 double screen board. Actually, I made 10. I took 9 of my production hives and I shook them this fall. I shook them as their brood was slowing down. I took all the brood, all but 2 frames of the brood, put them all down in the bottom box, shook all the bees down in the bottom box, put a double screen board on. Then I went and took another box with the 2 frames of brood, was 2 frames of food that I saved that weren't the best food frames. I put in virgin queens in. So I'm going to try to overwinter 2 deeps with the double screen board in between with the spring 23 queen and the summer solstice August 23 queen. And then I'll sell a nuke out and then recombine them for the production hive for next year. So I want to see how well that works.
You know me too well to give that advice.
Yeah. There's no such thing as start
here's
small.
Here's my truckload of queen mating nukes.
Yeah.
I get that. Well, for sure. So this year, I'll say finished queens, right? Queens that actually got mated and came back. I made about 28 of them. Didn't really sell any queens. I just kept what I did. But I stopped. I stopped after like 3 weeks. I just stopped, right? I didn't do any more. I put a cell in my starter finisher, made it a colony. So next year, I'm hoping to get started about the same time, maybe a little bit earlier next year, and just keep grafting, because now I'll have this wonderful part-time schedule that I can work around on my day job.
Don't forget drones, Bob. You need a good contingent of drones to service those queens. So there's only one thing that makes drones, and that's a nice, big, strong, healthy colony.
Right. Which is kind of what I've started trying to do this year, like follow more of your guys' lead, which I don't know how it's going to work. Shaking them all down into the single deep and then giving them a little bit of food on top. And then in the spring, shake them all back down into that single deep and, get them ready to roll that way. So that's the first time I've tried that. It's kind of always been, okay, we're going to grow them up. We're going to put a second deep on them for the winter. And then they're going to all move up. And in the spring, I'm going to reverse the boxes and put it's like, that's a pain in the ass. You can shake them all down, and then in the spring, all you got to do is drop a box on top of them, and Bob's your uncle, and let them roll.
Well, that's right. I plan on doing is just taking the whole bottom box off and I'll be able to sell a queen in April, middle of April, right? Because I can just start grafting in April. Then I can take the other 4 or 5 frames and make a nuke out of it and put a cell in it. So I can take that whole bottom box, and I still got the whole top box with the summer solstice queen that shouldn't swarm. And I'll just repeat that cycle every year. And if it works out good and I can overwinter them, I'll expand it to all 24 of my production hives.
Well, shouldn't swarm and won't swarm. I've learned are two very different things.
I learned that this year too.
it comes back to us as beekeepers too, right? Managing that space, because if she's a brand new queen and she comes out of spring, she's going to be on fire to lay that hive up, right? And if you're not paying attention, very quickly you'll start seeing cells and everything for them to start hitting the trees.
Yeah, they're not as
if you keep them in a single
for
box.
me in my climate, they're not as ready to swarm. But I found out this year that they will. Oh yeah, they'll swarm.
Let me see. Yeah, Mark.
I lost about 30% of my early May splits to swarms.
I need Mark to call me. I need to talk to him too. So the
Mr. Miller.
Hey Brian, good to see you.
Hey Brian.
Hey Brian.
Yeah, give me a call when you get a second, Mr. Miller. Not like right now during the stream, but like tomorrow, maybe if you're out on the road, give me a call. I got some questions I need to probe him for. And who knows? Maybe it's something like Mark Miller, just virgins. I know everybody laughs. You got mean bees. Not all my bees are mean. I've got a few colonies that are, they're suspect. But you know what? That one colony that the video and all the stuff came off of with the Appy tablet, that colony is about as gentle right now as anything I've seen. I just grab out a frame, move it. Bees don't care what I'm doing. It's pretty amazing.
Well, that kind of makes
sense.
Time,
happy bees, happy, healthy bees are gentle.
We always talk about bees that are being terrorized by skunks at night, that kind of thing. They say, "Oh, this hive is hot." They're very, very cranky and stingy bees. And you really look at it, you figure out that they're starting to be terrorized by skunks at night, and so they're right on guard in that way. So that makes perfect sense to me, Bob.
Mark wants me to dox myself and put my number right up in the chat.
Yeah, just do that. Just type it in there. It's okay.
Hey, Mark, Google Walker Bee Ranch. It'll pop right up. It'll pop right up. And I also left a voicemail for you, so it's probably already in your voicemail.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
367.
It's
867-5309.
That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's probably why I'm getting this. Hey, I'm making crab legs tonight. You want to come over for dinner? I'm like, I don't know you. And they're like, you're not my friend, Rose? Nope, I'm sorry, I'm not Rose. But I did have a friend message me on Facebook. It's coming over tomorrow to buy $100 worth of honey. So that's a good thing.
Nice.
It's good.
Blow up. But a couple things. I had somebody message me today about Apis Biologics, and that they took, I guess they opened the packs and put it in a different container than what it came in, and put it under the sink or in a storage area. And I said, no, don't do that. I mean, I thought everybody already knew, but in case you don't know, if you have Apis Biologics and once you open it, put that in the freezer. Just zip it back and put it in the freezer. Don't, because it's got a desiccant pack in it and you're trying to keep the moisture out of it. Otherwise, it'll start clumping and it'll absorb moisture and turn color, and that's not what you want. It'll still work, but it makes it much harder to I guess, get accurate levels of what you're trying to get in the scoops. So, yeah, well, it will mold too. So don't do that. So just put it in the freezer. Shane, people could figure it out, but they have to actually listen to the video to figure that information out. And if I type it in the chat, it's just out there forever. It's out. You have to search it. Hey, James, good to see you. It's going to be an interesting year. Definitely have things that I want to do. and are going to try to do.
Mr. McNally.
And
Evening.
Yeah.
And it's.
I know one thing. I don't want any more hives. 40 is what really was 30. The 40 will be my max. So hopefully I lose a few this winter. And
I've got 80 hives, and 80 is my new max. It's kind
no,
of like
I'm done.
You know how that goes.
I work full time.
You show up here
about
the 10th of September, and hives are going cheap, man.
Right. I think it's one of those things to where when you first start, remember when you first started and you grabbed your first couple of colonies and you're like, oh, I think I'm just going to stay at 4. And then after you start doing more research, oh, wait a minute, bees multiply. and now it's like
you have to split to keep them from swarming. So then you end up with 10. And it's like, yeah, okay, 10. That's not so bad. And then next season comes around.
To sell them.
Now you're 25.
Always a factor of X2 times 2. James says, oh yeah. So that's for sure. So it's like, oh, well, I wanted to sell 20 nukes this year. Well, only 10 of them got sold. So now I've got 10 nukes sitting over here. What am I going to do with these nukes? Oh, well, now we got to put them in a 10 frame colony. Oh, well, now I've got 10 more colonies. Well, next spring, we got to split them, so it becomes very interesting very quickly. So
they do multiply quite fast. And then once you're out there for a few years, people get to know your name. And then whenever there's a swarm, they give you a call. We got a swarm.
You know what? I'm taking less and less of those. If they're easy bee shakes and they're close to me, okay, I'll come. But most of the time, I'm not. Yeah. I'm trying not to do that anymore. I mean, and here's my philosophy about it, which doesn't mean anything. It's just my personal thing. Is at this point, I've got bees. I don't need bees. I can make bees, right? That's what we were saying. I can make bees. I don't need to come get that swarm that we don't know what it's got, or something like that, and bring it back to the apiary.
People say that all the time. Oh, yeah. Oh, we come and get these bees. They're free bees. Oh, I thought you want the free bees. It's like, have you seen my yard?
Right.
Have you seen my yard?
Bees. Yeah.
It's like,
I got plenty of bees.
The time it takes me to drive out and clean out your tree, I could make 15 of these.
Right. So, I mean, I do it more like a customer service around the area. And if it's close to me, like real close, I'm like, might be some of my bees that they're calling me about,
Yeah. I'll go to that because it's kind of like, I guess that swarm ended up in the neighbor's soffit.
Yeah. Look at what Brian Lee said here. He said, that's the truth. In March, I had 6 colonies. In July, I had 25. So, and, it's one of those things that, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's fun going to get swarms and stuff like that. And you get the people think it's cool that are watching you get the swarm out of the tree, right? Oh, wow. Yeah. Cool. And then, you got to grab a handful of them and show them how gentle they are. And it's just like,
I couldn't even do that on this last swarm on Friday the 13th because I did it at my lunchtime. And it was a 15-minute drive. And I said, well, okay, I got about 15, 20 minutes to get these bees in a box. So I just shook them in a bucket, dumped the bucket in a hive, closed it up, and left.
And then
after work, I went back and picked it up.
You still got a cluster right there because all the forager bees have come back, right? And then you're making
that's right.
So it's kind of, I just got to the point, like even some of the businesses that I've done, I don't have time to sit out there all day, and I don't want to leave my box there, for whatever that happened to it. So it's like, okay, I'm getting this many. You're gonna have some sitting on the fence pole tomorrow, but they'll go away. Right. Eventually, they'll either die or go away. Right?
They'll die in a week or two. Right.
So, Cheesecake Charlie, ladies and gentlemen, Cheesecake Charlie.
Cheesecake Charlie.
Hey.
How's it going?
Hey.
Bee meeting tonight? Bee meeting?
Well, I called a special board meeting tonight.
An emergency bee meeting?
No, special. What an emergency.
I had a special day today. 31 years today. Married.
Is that right?
31 years.
Yeah. So we went out to
Oh,
dinner.
well, congratulations.
Hey, Russell.
Oh,
You know
thanks.
what? I think it's Tim and Hannah's anniversary today too. So happy anniversary to you and Tim and
Yeah,
Hannah.
I think you're right.
So
Yeah, Dan, how was the meeting? Well, it was productive. We had issues of, meeting at a college and stuff like that. And the biggest problem we have ever since COVID, we've gotten so used to Zoom that you can't get people to come out for the most part.
Yeah.
And then
We
I had
wrestled with
Zoom
that.
speaker. Then I have Zoom speakers. And it's like, I had a speaker a week ago and I had 15 people show up. And it's like, where's the other 200 and some? So we decided to just, I got Zoom speakers coming in for the next couple months.
you have an email list for your club that you could send them an email. Look, this night
Oh,
we're
yeah.
having this person.
Oh yeah, we have all that stuff. I mean, we do a bunch of that kind of stuff. And we just decided we're going to Zoom it all. And now, like, we have a honey tasting thing. So the college is charging us, and we was a sort of not a fiasco, but I had to call the data guy, the IT guy. And I said, well, where's the computer at? Well, you needed a computer? I says, I was doing a Zoom meeting and I request, the guy that I used to work with, he's quit. Management at the college has been completely revamped. They don't know what they're doing. And I got it up and running. The guy got us up and running and everything like that. But,
so you'd be just as good to do a virtual meeting and send a link out and do it right from your table right there.
That's what I did for over a year when it Zoomed in. I said, I can Zoom this thing a whole lot easier right at my own desk. And most people want to stay home anymore, it seems like. Hey, Morgan. And so that's what we decided to cancel the rest of the room. We saving money. And in the meantime, we're going to check out a room at our local extension agency where it holds 50 people, which that'll be plenty big enough, as long as it's got good IT stuff.
What about a YMCA? Most of those have extra little rooms you could.
We don't have a YMCA around that I know of.
Really?
Yeah.
One of my customers today was from Maryland. They just moved down here.
Oh, yeah.
And around Baltimore area. So we talked about you, Charlie. So you should be proud. I got friends that are beekeepers in Maryland. And so, I mean, it's just, another day in paradise. So, Charlie, you probably haven't gotten to hear much of what we were saying unless you're listening.
I just jumped in.
So, hey, Rodney, good to see you. So we've been talking a lot, like Brad was telling us about the feeding issues that he's having as far as still having brood in the colonies and how he's feeding them up to try as they hatch out to backfill the rest of that brood nest and zombie hives. And we've also talked about going forward, what's our plans for next year, what, even business wise,
2024.
For 2024. And it's not that far away. We're sitting here.
Well, look at this. It's like a guy today said, well, it's about the 7th of October. I said, no, it's the 17th. Yeah, and we're all, we're beyond halfway through the month of October.
And right.
And today, as far as feeding for me, Sunday I went out there and I've got 18 nukes and I got 12 10 frame honey hives. So I pulled 7 of the nuke feeders off. And if they had a little bit of fluid in there, I just, drop it into the other ones that were still sucking it down. So then yesterday I went out there in the evening and worked till almost dark and I pulled 8 of the 10 frame feeders off those hives, and I had the feeders that were left, the 11 feeders left on my nukes were kind of on the dry side. So I said, okay, they're still pulling it in. That's how I kind of judge it. So I carried them things. If there was a pint or maybe a half a quart in there, I just dumped it into those feeders, and then brought those 8 feeders in yesterday evening and washed them, clean any bird comb off of them, set them outside and let them dry till noontime today. And I put them inside the building. So then at lunchtime, I had to kind of work through lunch a little bit. So I went out there. I said, I just had an itching to get more done. And I was busy this evening because of this special meeting. So I went out there and spent a half an hour at the most. I went out there and I pulled the rest of those 10 framers off. So they're all done. Poured the fluid into the rest of them that are sitting on these nukes behind me. And then I came around here and washed them out and let them dry this afternoon and put them inside the building.
You've gotten to, you're kind of like Tom. You've gotten to your stasis point is what I'll call it, is you've gotten to where you want to stay at. 30 to 33 colonies right in there.
I usually, if I get 20 nukes and 12 hives, that's 32. I'll jump up. If I want to try to get my queen rearing operation up and running, especially my cell builder, I want to get it robust and get the right kind of bees in there and get it running, so I can do some cells and make my own queens and get that, fine tune that skill. I'll put it to you that way. When it comes to graphing, that's the easy part. Me building up my cell builder is my downfall.
Well, the thing is, you figured out this is the workload you can manage, and that's where you want to stay. And there's all kinds of things that play in that, right? We're getting older, our age, our time, right. Things like that really control how many you want to do, and then for how long you want to do it for, and stuff like that. And you've gotten to the point where you've impressed me this year, Charlie, with the fact that the average in your area is about 50 pounds, and you're almost doubling that on your colonies. So you're making more honey with less bees. And I think
less hives.
Less hives, less bees.
Yeah, right.
It's all relative, but
I'll put it to you this way: if it wasn't for them 4 queens, I think I could have did 100 pounds per hive.
But that's
I'm double what the state standard says.
I think that's something that's important for everybody. It's not about the number of colonies necessarily that you have. It's how much, like for me, or we'll just use you as an example since we're on there, is that you don't have to have 50 colonies to produce the amount of honey that you want, which saves you as far as an operation on your mite treatments, more equipment, and all of those things, because you've gotten to that spot to where this is how many I want, because I need this much honey to make it for your year, for your customers. Like I had a customer today message me and said, hey, I know it's late in the year. Do you still have honey? Absolutely, I still have honey, right? That's the response. So
never run out of honey.
And you figured out the number it takes you to make it from year to year. So that customer, when they come to you, they know they'll always be able to get that fresh honey from you. And that you don't have to run 10,000 colonies to do what
it's like Brad there. Brad talks about he has a certain amount of honey, but he doesn't want just to the point of 1 year. He wants to overlap into the next year. And that's where I'm at. If I can get 1,000 to 1,200 pounds, I'm lapping a couple hundred pounds into the next year. So that's good. and
See,
we had
my strategy has always been to retire with about 30,000 pounds of honey in the shed, but I'm not doing so well on that yet.
Well,
because then I could continue to sell honey for a few years and not have to produce any.
Beekeeping to me,
it's a good idea, Brad.
Beekeeping to me is different than almost anything else as far as a business model, because we all, when we start out, we're like, I'll get a couple hives, they'll make me 100 pounds of honey a piece, and we start doing that bee math. Oh, I only need 100 hives, I'll get 10,000, whatever the number is, 10,000 pounds of honey, and that's it, right? But it doesn't work that way, because
it's farming.
So let's say a bee conference,
100 hives, half of them die in the winter, 25% of them die in the summer, and 10% of those are no damn good anyway.
There you go. Bang it down.
So you go to so like, let's say if you were a concert promoter, right? You have a venue, and you have what it costs to set your stage and equipment up, and you have to sell X number of tickets to break even, right? So if you sell 10,000 tickets for that show, it's break even. So you don't cut your ticket sales off at 10,000. You got to, everything over that 10,000 goes to the bottom line. It's just straight profit, right? So it's kind of like last year at Hive Life, I had talked to Cayman, and they're like, I think we're going to cut it off at, I think he said 2,000 to begin with. I'm like, 2,000? Once I get to 2,000, if that's kind of my number, I'm going to keep selling until they tell me I can't bring any more people in the building. That's my thought process, right? Because everything over that 2,000 then goes straight to profit on the bottom line. You covered everything, and then you're growing. But bees don't work like that. So if you need 100 hives, well, every hive after that, well, now there's an input cost. Frames, bees, well, maybe not bees, you can make those, but the frames, the boxes, the lids, the feeders, all that stuff, you continue to have to spend to make that. There's not a cap. Like, it doesn't stop. It's as you grow, you just pay more. And oh, wait a minute.
What do you mean I need a bigger extractor? And what do you mean I can't uncap with a hot knife anymore? And what do you mean I need a wax press? And what do you mean I need a wax spinner? And what do you mean I can't lift that many pails? And
then you're like,
now I need a building.
Now there's this new entrance reducer out. Well, I need 1,500 of those, so that's $1,000 on entrance reducers.
Well, and that's why
I gotta do 2,000
hives. Like me, it's just a piece of wood because that's cheap.
but I mean,
everything. The only thing I have to say
like
was
$7.50.
It's like, don't jump in on everything. Kind of.
You're ruining my game plan.
But you got to work in on things. Don't be throwing so damn much money out.
Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, you guys have seen it. Hey, I'm thinking about doing solstice splits. Send me 55 queens. Bam.
Yeah.
All dead. Snake eyes. I lose. It's kind of one of those things. It happens. So it's like you don't do that too many times. But it's is what it is. But
it's like you were talking about. With beekeeping, for me, I had no plans of doing all this kind of stuff. It's like my brother says. We got the stuff that we do at the mill, where we went from just a sawmill, and then he came to me one time. Well, some people got after it. You ought to dry that wood, and you ought to sell grade lumber or cabinetry lumber. And so we bought a small dryer, and then we tested the waters. We seen that we could make sales, so we got bigger, and then we expanded, and then we found, you make a phone call and bring in some exotic lumber, mahogany and stuff that we don't have around in this state. And we did that. And then we were running on this. Everybody was into woodworking, and women drive the market. Women got into woodworking, and here we're looking at this saying, hey, this is our future. The sawmill's going to die and this dry lumber thing is going to go. It went on for about 15 years. And all of a sudden, women got out of it. People got out of the fad of woodworking, the young guys and stuff. And now we're back to where the sawmill is still the leading, money taker. And in some months, the dry lumber is. And then we've gotten better at it to where, hey, pine, I don't need to dry my own pine. I can buy it in cheaper, already processed and stuff like that. And we got into it by accident. And it's the same thing here. I started watching Michael Palmer and he talked about self-sustainability, 15 years ago. And I said, well, the nukes is where we need to go. And so I started getting into nukes. And then I could never understand, well, how am I going to get these queens? And I finally figured out that the key to self-sustainability is being able to raise your own queens. Everything else comes along naturally in the bee world.
Oh, night and day difference.
Yeah. When you can raise your own queens, it all comes together. That's the third leg of the operation. You got your honey, you got your bees, but now you got your queens. And that's the key. That is the key that opens the door to self-sustainability.
And working backwards. Working backwards. I said that a few times this year. Working backwards from your goal, right? What do you want to do? When do I have to do that? When do I need to start that plan, right? So if I want to make nukes in 2 weeks, well, I got to have queens in 2 weeks. Well, I also have to have all my bees split into the nuke boxes in 2 weeks. So you have to work backward from your goal to how you're going to get to that goal, right? And make yourself a little.
A lot of people don't realize I started my 2024 goal plan in July.
Right.
July is when I started setting up all those double screen boards for nukes for early April that I can sell that most people can't sell in the northern part of the country. That's my plan.
I mean, you were talking about where I'm at. Yeah, I'm at the level where, I watched some other YouTubers and they started out farming, and it's the same thing with me beekeeping. When you're a little younger and more energetic, then I got all these ideas to do all these different things. And as time progresses, age sets in and you're a little tireder. Your interest changes. Your focal points of what you want to do change.
Well, my give a damn changes. No, everything else stays the same. But whether or not I give a damn if it gets
how many
done,
hours you can spend out on the field working your bees?
Right. So I mean, when I work my bees, I kind of work them. I work the nukes one weekend and work the honey hives the other weekend, unless it is honey season. I might be out there twice a week checking. Depending with if it's in the main flow, you're going to check the honey boxes at least once or twice a week. Depending, but people tell me, oh, it's so much work to them. And I'm like, well, it comes in flows. And, right now I'm getting rid of in the process of getting rid of all my top high feeders and clean them, put them away. And things are starting to dramatically slow down. And it's like, all right, I got all my feeders off of my 10 framers. I'm done. I've closed them up. Except for mite treatments. I'll start mite treatments next month with OA, and which is only, a couple weeks away. And it'll be probably chillier. And then I'll, by that time I'll have all these feeders off and I'll be doing the nukes for as far as OA treatments. And that's pretty much it, And then when December hits, that's when I'll put my carpet on my big highs, when the windy times come to block the wind off. And that's it. And I'm kind of in the winter mode.
If this new feeder lid works out for me the way I hope it does, and it's a work in progress to test, then I will shift everything. All my 10 frames will get the new lid. It's to me, if the price is right, that's a caveat to it, right? But the thing,
but use that thing for a while
Yeah, I've got it on
and
there.
and see the pros and the cons with it first.
Right.
You know, because I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, what are you going to do? You got to drain that thing out. Of course, now you don't have to worry about freezing too much. I don't know. It's just.
Yeah, so it's my thing is that if I buy a new migratory cover, well, then I've got to cut a hole in it for a feeder, right? Then I got to put a lid in it to cover the hole. Then I got to buy a jar or a bucket that goes on it that I have to drill holes in that lid. And then I have to take those jars and fill them and bring them back. So, and then you guys see my yard, jars everywhere. Got jars just sitting every freaking.
Yeah, it's a real mess.
So with the lid, I'm like, when it's empty, you just put the lid on there. It's just a regular old lid, right? Insulated lid. And if it's got feed in it, well, hopefully I'm only feeding in the, spring and in the fall. Then I don't have to worry about it too much. And the
only thing you're going to have to buy if you go that way is you're going to have to buy a pump with a big old hose and a gas nozzle on the end of it. You can go around there like I do. I go right down that line with that truck with that 40-gallon tank, and I know as long as I only feed half of those 10-frame feeders, I can fill everybody up.
Well, have you seen Bob Binney's? He uses that little. It's like a $200 pump on his truck. It's just a gear
probably
pump
from Harbor Freight.
Well, he used the most expensive one that you could buy, right? He's not buying the $79. No, he's buying the $179 job, right? He's not buying the least expensive one. But then he's just got a hose reel with the thing, and it runs off like yours does, right? 12 volts. He just wires it straight to the battery, or in your case, to the outlet on the back.
You got the same outlet on your truck. All you got to do is buy that $5 pigtail, put it in there. You're only using a ground and a hot, and you turn your marker lights on, and now you got power to your pump. But the problem of it is the diaphragm pump is not going to pump that big thick syrup that you got. You're going to have to go with a gear pump.
Yeah, that's what he uses, a gear pump, 12-volt gear pump. And it's like $180, the one that he showed on his stream. And speaking of Bob Binney, tomorrow night he's going to be over on the stream team with the guys over there. So I believe it's 8 o'clock. I'm not sure whose channel it's going to be on. Maybe Bruce's.
I think it's Bruce's.
So definitely check that out. The Bob, as he's known over here. I am a Bob, and
Bob's a good guy.
You're Bob, and he's the Bob.
He's the Bob. But it gets confusing because they'll be like, well, Bob said this. I'm like, hell no, I didn't. I probably should have, but I didn't. You
get credit for a lot of stuff.
I've become a King Bob, Russell says. So, definitely get credit for a lot of Bob's statements on here.
How are you finished with dinner?
Finished with dinner, and I was
prepping for tomorrow and the rest of the week.
No, I was paddling my my creamed honey for a little while.
There you go.
I started a batch today.
Was it a bad creamed honey that you had to paddle it?
It was very bad.
That's awesome.
So I'm signing off a little early this week, today.
All right, Tom. Well, we appreciate you stopping in, buddy.
Tom.
Yeah, I got some stuff to take care of.
That's it.
Went out to dinner, worked, and then came back in here. Have a good one. Good night, all.
All right, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
That's me, Bob.
See you, Todd.
The
and Brad,
boy.
Bob.
But yeah, a lot of stuff we do on here is in fun. So never mean to offend anybody. So apologize if I do.
Or did you make your honey cream?
No.
Charlie, where's my yellow flag?
That's a red card.
That's
a red card.
I need to buy me some soccer cards so I can just hold it up to the screen. That's a violation.
You're in a timeout.
Charlie,
mute him for 300 seconds.
There went monetization for tonight. But So Todd, I'm knowing you've been listening while you've been doing your other stuff. So you see what we're talking about tonight. What's your input on that? What you've got going on for next year, your plans, and what's going on right now?
Well, Brad knows this. Brad talked me off the ledge the other day. Because
I would have talked you off the ledge the other way. Jump, do it.
I left so much.
How far you could plummet before you blacked out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, I left too much honey out there, but it was kind of a problem of, do I treat my mites now, or do I wait until about right now to treat them? Which maybe I could have, maybe I couldn't have, but I didn't want to take the chance of not having any mites in February or any bees in February. So I chose to treat. Well, as I was treating, that's when that wide open flow came in, and it was just full on Nectar City. So anyway, lesson learned, right? That's how we learn. We learn by our mistakes. So next year I'm going to be prepared, because I know the weather is going to be the same next year.
But that blue curl doesn't always show up.
Correct. Right? But in wet years it does. And I've been looking at long range forecasts, and it's supposed to rain as much. And now they're saying maybe even more than last year.
So long range forecast in South Carolina is like 5 minutes. They can't get it right, tomorrow. So it's like, I better look at what's happening right now. So, but here's like what we've talked about this, but with the blue curl, you're when you would normally treat for mites, and it may or may not happen.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
but see, okay, so not this, what is it? 22-23 rain season, 22 inches. 21-22 rain season, 5 inches. Before that, it was like 6, 7, 8, something like that for like the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years. It's just been terribly dry, right? We don't get a lot of rain. And I watched the blue curl come up, but it doesn't, it's out. But I mean, this year it was thick as all get out. It was crazy thick.
Well, not for nothing, Todd, but there's a lot of people that would be happy with 5 inches out there.
Time out.
Okay, red card. Oh, wait. What channel am I on?
Yeah. You're on my channel. Yeah,
monetization
it is what it is.
Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so my lesson learned for next year is I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to do my mite treatments earlier, and I'm going to do those tablets, and I'm going to do them in middle July. And that will run me to the middle of August, the end of August. And that's when that blue curl will be out of the ground, but it starts blooming in September. And so those bees will be primed and ready. Other than that, I have no need to feed. Unlike Brad, I didn't have to go to the store and buy 900 pounds of sugar or whatever it was. I can't remember. Was it 900 pounds?
Yeah, so almost just under 900. Yeah.
I think I have that much. I think that's how much, maybe 1,000 pounds I left out in the yard. So everybody's got enough. I'll equalize it again as we go through. I'll make sure everybody's taken care of.
Yeah.
Lesson learned. It was, but this isn't going to happen every year. So that's why I was, on the ledge. But, I know it's going to happen next year, and who knows after that, maybe it does again. I don't know, but I'll be ready.
Yeah,
so what is it about the ground out there that they have these mudslides and stuff? Is the ground hard, or is it like sand that it just doesn't absorb?
It's different in different areas, but the big thing is forest fires. If there's forest fires that burn the vegetation off the hillside, it's like gravy coming downhill when there's a ton of rain. Santa Barbara, I think it was 2 years ago, got flooded out because a canyon above Santa Barbara had a fire in it. It just wiped it out, and there were no trees to hold the soil, nothing. And it washed right down the canyon.
I mean, of course, we get grass, and if it burns the grass, it's like, oh, that's all that nice nitrogen and everything goes
Yeah.
back in the ground, and the grass comes up greener because it got rid of all this thatch and all this dead stuff, and it, it's nutrients back into the ground, and it
Yeah.
comes back up greener and nicer than it did before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that
But
that's
you had a root system there too. It's not going to wash away.
yeah. So that's where most of the mudslides come from. Sometimes it's just, well, it depends on the soil again. Some parts of California, it's like around here, it's sandy until you get to about 3 feet. Then it's concrete. It's really super hard clay. It's hard pan is what they call it, and it's tough.
Well, they talk about that.
Well, that's
in,
why the
Texas.
water has nowhere to go. It
Yeah.
goes into that top layer, and then it turns the whole thing to soup because the water doesn't go anywhere.
Well, it's like Texas. They talk about what they call it, prehistoric cement. Where you go down in there and it's like the ground is almost as hard as cement.
No, Amir, excuse me. No, I just took them out. They were on for 65 days, but of course I don't condone that use. It's just something that I tried. It's not.
You went off label with it.
I went off the reservation is what I did.
But then you went with
Did I hear
Apogard
that
after
right?
that,
Did
right?
I hear that right?
He went off label with his off label.
Yeah.
And then you had Apogard after that you were
correct.
using.
Yeah. So next year I'm gonna mix it up. So next year I'm gonna use Apogard in the spring after oranges. I'm gonna kill that 1 month that it will be on there, and then in June they'll get wildflower and thistle and all that good stuff, and then I'll treat in July again, like I said, and if I need to, I'll spot treat in December if I have to. That's it.
And as far as, are you planning to try to grow more colonies next year? Because I know you're trying to get to the almonds.
Yeah. I had a conversation yesterday with Jose, and we were talking for quite a while, and he was telling me a story about some queens that he happened upon, and half of me wanted to call him yesterday and take all those doubles down and just double my yard right then and there, but I didn't have any. I had no source for queens, and it turned out that if I called Jose, I would have had a source for queens, but I decided, I'll play my cards in the almonds and see what happens. But that, depends on how many hives I have coming out of winter too. So I'm going to be slapping the patties on them pretty quick and beefing them up and doing what I can.
Well, hey, I've got an interesting, at least it might be a comical thing for Thursday night stream.
Yeah.
So I want everybody that's watching, we got 70 people watching right now. We're going to call it short bus beekeeping Thursday night. So everybody bring the stupidest thing you've done in the bee yard. We all have something, right? It doesn't matter if you're Ian Stepler, you've done something very retarded in your beekeeping and you're like, what the hell was I thinking? That's what I want the topic to be Thursday night to start out with.
I'll have a hard time narrowing it down.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you got more than one, you're just you're an overachiever. And
more than one? Are you kidding?
we should have like the helmet wearer award.
I got more than one today, I think. I didn't even work the bees today.
We can have the helmet wearer award for who has the dumbest mistake they've made in the bee yard. So Todd, let me see. Russell says, Todd, do your bees ever shut down brooding in the winter?
No.
Yeah, you're like me, right?
I'll get a small patch of brood, maybe 3-4 inches in diameter.
I think you and I are probably about the same parallel in the United States, just on different coasts, right?
Yeah. But we do freeze. I don't think you freeze though. You're on the Atlantic.
Yeah, we freeze a little bit. I mean, we were 44 last night. So I mean, I called it just just like a champ. I said the middle of October when the fair's in town, you start getting those cold nights, and the fair just ended. James Knoll says he will win. Hey, and we can make it interesting. Maybe we do like the winner gets a free set of these gloves I've got over here. You know, that'll be something interesting. So just for kicks and grins, you know, it's winding down. We don't have a lot of bee stuff that's really shaken out this time of year. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what everybody else says.
So I didn't do any bee work today, but what I did do is bee related. I a couple weeks ago I was talking to Brad about this. I think you guys have seen the weed barrier I have on the ground in my bee yard. It's all tore up. And so Brad suggested this geo-woven something. And he said it's, they use it for road construction. I have a buddy that owns a road construction company. So I called him up. I said, Dan, hey, man, do you have any of this geo-woven fabric, textile, or whatever it's called? Oh, yeah. I got rolls of it. How much you need? Oh, they're 12. The rolls are 12 feet wide. And so I measured out some things at the farm. I go, how about a couple 50-foot strips? Yeah, not a problem. Come down here, whenever. And I said, all right, well, I'm on vacation this week, so I'll probably do it Tuesday. So I rolled down to his warehouse on Tuesday or this morning, and we went into the shop, and the guy had the roll out on the forklift and rolled it all out, had everything pre-measured for 50 feet, and cut me a couple sections. And he says, I said, Dano, I think I might need a little more than that. He said, you want 2 more? Yeah, that'd be great. So I got 200 feet of that stuff. So he had rolls of it. They have rolls and rolls and rolls. That's all they do. So I'm gonna this winter, whether I have some bees that go to the almonds or not. There's a forklift. The tractor's got forks on the farm, so I'll just borrow one of the guys there and say, hey, can you lift these up, and I'll roll this under. And I'm leaving that other stuff down there. I'm not taking it out. I'm going to leave it down there, and then I'll just roll this other stuff right on top of it. Plop the hives back or the pallets back down, and there you go. And as Brad would say, Bob's your uncle. But yeah, that stuff is heavy duty too. It's thick, so I don't think I'll be kicking a hole in it with my boots anytime soon.
Will grass and stuff grow back up through it or no?
No. It's he said that it's, even though it's woven, it's got really fine holes in it. I might get a little thing, blade or two, but I won't get a weed. He said it could push it up, but all you have to do is walk on it enough and knock the weeds back.
Right.
So we'll see. But hopefully it won't be raining cats and dogs this year, and I get a chance to do it before everything happens.
Well, we're coming up on 10 o'clock here. We'll try to keep it to the 2-hour limit tonight. I think they're getting tired of me being late for work, is all I'm saying.
Uh-oh.
So, at any rate, so we're right at 10 o'clock tonight. So we're going to end the live stream for tonight, but bring your short bus beekeeping stories for Thursday night. I think that'll be a fun topic to interject in between the other hijinks that go on the stream. And tomorrow night, stream team Bob Benny will be there. So,
did you see the latest? Brian, he's selling shoes now.
I did watch his video. I saw the shoes he was wearing, but I don't know that much about those shoes. So
all they are is rubber boots, I think.
But
he's a boot salesman now.
At any rate, guys, we're going to end it for tonight, and we will talk to you guys on the next stream. Thanks.
See ya.